Maybe you're wondering, what is the best Sony Alpha camera ever made? Or what are the worst ones ever made that you should avoid at all costs? Well, that's what today's video is about. We are ranking every Sony mirrorless camera over like the last 15 years or so, ranking them with the tier maker system that's just super popular. I've wanted to do this video for a very long time. I just didn't want to take the time to make thumbnails of every single camera, but last night I spent like 2 hours and I did this for you because I want you to know what my opinion is about the best Sony Alpha cameras. And again, this is just my opinion, like truly, take what I say with a grain of salt. I have tested 32 of these cameras personally, and then the other 15-ish I'm very familiar with and I've done a lot of research on, reviewed sample footage and photos, and so I have an educated basis for my claim about where it fits in this tier system. I'm going off of 4 different criteria. The 4 criteria are, first and foremost is performance. How well do these cameras perform? Second is my personal testing experience. Everybody does different types of content. They produce different types of things. So in my personal testing, sometimes it relies around like concert work. I do concert video and promo work, or I do wedding filmmaking or short documentary stuff or YouTube studio. So it's based on my personal testing with the camera in that specific environment. Third will just be like the cultural impact that this camera made, the way it shifted the ecosystem of even other camera ecosystems like Canon and Fuji, Nikon, etc. And the fourth will just be my personal bias. I am biased. I like some of these cameras more than others, and that will probably show through, which is totally fine. This is my list. I get to rank them how I want to rank them. This is just the order that tier maker populated these cameras in, so we're just gonna go right down the line from beginning to end, starting with the Sony A7. This is the first full frame camera that Sony ever made. I think it came out around like 2014 or so, and it had a huge cultural impact, obviously, and shaped the future of mirrorless cameras. So that has it going for it, but I'm gonna actually rank this at D tier. I know that's kind of a harsh rating for the original Sony A7, but I like this camera. I think it's a great camera, but there's a lot of problems with it, especially its autofocus performance is not very good. Its low light performance, not the best, but it did have a great cultural impact. It's gonna get a D tier for me. I'm so sorry for those of you who love that camera. The next camera on our list is the Sony A5000. Oh man, this camera's going straight to F tier, unfortunately. The reason is because the A5000 is basically an NEX camera. So those cameras are actually pretty good, and I've done a lot of reviews on my channel, but the A5000 is sort of a rebrand of the NEX line with a new menu system, but it doesn't really have any huge benefit over the NEX cameras, but it's more expensive. So because of that, you're paying a more premium price for the rebrand. It really doesn't have a lot of improvements for that camera. However, the Sony A5100 does have quite a few improvements. I'm gonna put it on D tier for now. Man, it sounds so harsh. I'm putting it at D tier for now just because at the end of the day, it really is actually, we're gonna go to the next camera too, the Sony A6000. These two have the same exact sensor. I'm gonna put them both in D tier. I like them. They produce good results for photography and pretty beginner level video results, but they're not outstanding in any regards, and they both need a lot of improvements. I like the A5100. Maybe I'll scoot this down underneath the A6000 as far as the D tier is concerned. Moving on to the A6100, that's gonna bump up to C tier. It's better than the A6000 in every regard. You also get 4K video, which is great. I like this camera. It's a good camera. A6300, I'm gonna go ahead and put that, I guess I'm gonna keep it in D tier just because the A6400, I'm gonna bump up to C tier. It's a great camera. The 6300 and the 6400 are very similar in a lot of regards. You get 4K video out of both, but the A6400 has quite a few improvements to its autofocus system and has a fully flip-up screen to be able to film yourself. A6400 is gonna get a C tier for me. A6500, it's basically the A6300, but I think in-body stabilization is the one main feature that they changed on that. I could take that or leave that personally. It's still gonna get a D tier ranking for me. The A6600, it's the only A6000 line camera besides the A6700 that has the Sony Z battery. So you get way better battery performance out of this 6600. So it's a good option. I like it. It's beefier. It feels more like the A7C body does and very much less like the A6000 line. So I'm gonna put the A6600 personally into C tier. I like that camera. I think it's a quality option, even in 2024. Okay. And again, these are all relative. Like, I'm competing them against some of Sony's best cameras they've ever made. A lot of these I love using personally, but I'm well aware that they fall into these different categories. A6700, however, This camera is amazing. This is going straight to A tier. It's not S tier like Supreme. It doesn't rank Supreme in Sony's camera line, but it's an awesome camera. If you bought the a6700 this year, you probably would not need another camera for 5, 6, 7 years down the road, and even further than that. I think this is gonna be an outstanding camera for many years to come, so it's gonna go straight to A tier as kind of the top tier APS-C style camera that Sony's practically ever released. Next is gonna be the A7C. Where should this A7C go? I think I'm gonna go B tier here, and there's a reason why. I'm actually gonna go out of order for a second and also put the A7 III into B tier. These cameras are very similar in a lot of regards. It's kind of the same camera, just in a smaller compact body format. So both of them are outstanding. The A7 III, when it first came out, just shook the world. Talk about cultural impact and bias for me. This camera made me so much money over the course of 3 years. I used it for a ton of production work. The A7 III, that is. And the A7C is similar to that camera in a lot of ways, just a little more compact. So both of them are gonna get a B tier ranking from me. Okay, A7C2. Whew, this camera is really good too. I'm gonna have to give this an A tier because it is better than the A7C, the original A7C in many ways. So it's gonna have to go up to that extra category for the A tier. Love that camera. Okay, the A7CR. Man, this thing is so good. It's either A tier or S tier. I'm gonna go ahead and bump it up to our first camera that gets the S tier ranking. This camera is so good. It's so good. I mean, the fact that they fit such a high resolution sensor into the A7CR is amazing. It's basically the best compact style camera for photography that Sony has ever made. So it's gotta go in the S tier ranking. Love that camera. Okay, next, the A7 II. Oof, this camera's gonna have to go D tier for me. Only because, I mean, I'll rank it up above all of these guys right here, and the A6300 and A6500 as well. Those are all really good. A7 II though, however, it's just a marginal improvement to the A7. It is better in a lot of regards. It probably deserves, okay, I'm changing my mind. I'm bumping it up to C tier because it's better than the A6100, probably. I mean, not as far as autofocus. Just kidding, I'm going back. It has way worse autofocus than all three of these cameras. So A7 II, good full frame camera, a good full frame entry level camera, but not better as far as autofocus and cultural impact as some of these, like the A6400, whew, man, that changed the culture for sure. A7 IV, boom. Actually, it's gonna go right here. It's gonna be the top A tier camera for now. It's such a good camera for both photo and video. Basically, if you have $2,000 to spend, I think it's $2,500 bucks, but you could get it used. If you have $2K to spend, there's not a better option for a hybrid shooter. A7 IV all the way. Do I have it? Actually, I'm filming on it right now. Filming on the A7 IV. Love this camera. It's hooked up as my streaming camera right now. So using that, love that guy. A7R, oof, it's gonna go D tier. It's gonna even go below some of these other ones. Well, it'll go right here above the A6500. I like this camera, it's good. It has a really high resolution sensor, but there's nothing super special about it as far as its autofocus system. Its noise performance is pretty poor, so nothing that great about it. With the A7R II, I'm gonna go ahead and drop that into C tier just because of the huge resolution bump you're getting over the A7R even. It increased megapixels quite a bit. I think the A7R was like a 30 something megapixel and it bumps up to a 40 something megapixel in the R2. And it's just better than the A7 II and the A7, so it's gonna get that increase. The A7R III though is very good. Oh man, would I put it next to the A7 III though? I don't think I would. I think this is gonna be our top ranked C camera for now. The A7R III, such a good resolution in that camera. It's such a beautiful portrait camera. It's great for landscapes, just capturing really great detail out of these landscapes, getting the highest resolution. It's a great option, even in 2024, truly. But the A7R IV is going to get a B tier ranking for me. It'll be our, I'm gonna go A7 III will be our top for now. A7R IV will be number 2. Just because of cultural impacts in my mind. Like the A7 III coming in at under, I think it was just under $2,000 when it was released. So the A7R IV, it's way more expensive. It wasn't for everyone. And I think I know several people who, when the A7 III came out actually, yeah, they sold either their A7R III or their A7R4 because the A7 III was so good. It was that good. They were like, I don't need this extra resolution in my R series. I'm selling that and I'm gonna get the A7 III. I personally know 2 people that did that actually. So that just shows you like the cultural impact of that A7 III. The next is the A7R5. I don't know why it says 4, but this will be another camera that's gonna be an S tier camera. That's gonna take over the top spot. The A7R5, I apologize for it being, looks like I had a misprint on the labeling, but the A7R5 is S tier all the way. A great screen, one of the best screens I've ever seen. Amazing resolution, very similar to the A7CR. And basically, it's the best photo camera, or one of the best, we'll get there. One of the best photo cameras to ever be created, and Sony just knocked it out of the park with the A7R5. Okay, our next camera is the A7S, the very first A7S. I'm having a hard time deciding to put it in C tier or D tier. I think it's gonna live up higher here on the D tier. It's such a good video camera, but it has a lot of the same problems as the first generation of the A7s, like the A7, A7S, A7R. These all had their quirks and their reliability as far as autofocus and noise performance. The A7S was quite a bit better at low light performance than the other 2, but not enough to justify putting it over these other cameras I have in C tier right now. That changes though with the A7S II. This camera is gonna get a huge, this is a bias pick here. Oh man, this camera's amazing. It's gonna go B tier for now just because there's some other things that are much better now, but at the time, I know 2 or 3 video production companies, 3, that I edited for in the last 5 years, who for a long time, even when the A7S III came out and some of like the FS5s, the FX6 even was released, and they were still holding on to their A7S IIs and shooting a ton of content with that camera because of how good the image quality looked coming out of the A7S II. I love that camera. It's amazing. If you only have, I think nowadays you can get one for like $800, $850, $900, so under $1,000 for an A7S II. You could start a full-fledged video production company with this camera. So long as people don't really care or know about what camera you're using, as long as they only care about the results, the A7S II is outstanding and deserves probably a higher rating than B tier, but just because of some of their latest releases, Sony's latest releases, I can't put it higher than the B tier because the A7S III is gonna live A tier for me, and it's actually gonna take the top spot. This camera is amazing. It's outstanding. I bought it, I pre-ordered it when it was released. Just as far as price point wise, I think it was like $3,500 at the time, and the image quality you get for that is just next to none. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. I love that camera. And basically, if you have an A7S III, you probably aren't gonna need another video camera, maybe ever. I don't even know. I mean, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, a few more A series to go before we dive into some of the cinema line and then the NEX system. We're gonna start with the Sony A9. This camera is good. It's gonna get a C tier ranking for me. Oh man, that's pretty harsh. That's pretty harsh. The reason is, it's just not that good. It's very specialized, and this is a bias thing for me. It is really good. It's got a great sensor. It had like a brand new sensor at the time, which I think they actually ended up putting in the Sony A6400. So they share a similar processor, excuse me, not sensor. They share a similar processor. And that's why the A6400 has such good autofocus performance. I think for a price to value ratio, the A9 is just pretty dang expensive. And that with the A9 II, we see quite a few improvements. So I'm gonna bump that up to probably one of the top spots in B tier, maybe right underneath the A7 III. And then the A9 III is going to be S tier performance. This thing was just released. It's February 2024, and it was released maybe a couple months ago. Amazing, a global shutter. It's just, this camera's wild. It's absolutely wild. I don't know what they're gonna do with this sensor. Where are they gonna put the sensor in some of the other cameras that they're releasing? It's probably gonna be involved with the A1 Mark II in some way, I would imagine. I don't know, but the A7, or excuse me, the A9 III, outstanding. You wouldn't go wrong with that camera in any way for photography. Plus it has like amazing video too, like amazing video. Okay, moving on, the A1, top tier. I have this camera. I don't know where it is. I think it's behind me on this shelf. No, sorry, this shelf right here. It's amazing. I love it. I love it in every way. It is too expensive though. It's too expensive. $6,500 for a camera? That's just ridiculous. I mean, how can you afford that? The reason I got it was from a wedding gift. My wife and I both shoot content all the time, so our parents went in on this together and got us the A1. I would have never purchased this camera though for $6,500. It's way too much. But what you're getting amazing 4K in every single codec and frame rate. You're getting 8K video as well, which is kind of primitive, but it looks really good and is very high resolution. You can leverage that down the road for years to come, the ability to shoot 8K. As some of these cameras are getting 8K, the A1 has had it since I believe 2021, which is when it was released, and we're in 2024, and we're not really seeing any camera have 8K, so this is way ahead of its time, which is neat. And obviously it's just like the best photo camera with the best autofocus system we've ever seen, so it's gotta get the top spot. Okay, diving into some of the cinema cameras. The FS5, I'm gonna give a C tier ranking. It's an APS-C cinema camera that's really good. You're gonna get great image quality, and it'll sort of change the way you shoot as a video creator. You can get this camera for under $2,000 in 2024, maybe even like $1,800, $1,500 if you're lucky. And the FS5 Mark II had a few key improvements to it. I'm gonna give that a B tier ranking because honestly, visually, every camera in B tier, A7 III to A7S II, are probably gonna be a better sensor. I think all of these are actually, yeah, all of these are full frame except for the FS5 Mark II. That's an APS-C camera. So you're just gonna get better low light performance for sure, but it's an amazing camera. It looks really good. Next is the FF7. I've used this camera before. I personally would probably put it in C tier. It's just a very big camera. It's very big, and for the image quality that you get out of it, basically, I mean, most of the cameras on this list, the A9, the A7R3, A6100, 60, all of these produce equal, if not better, in a smaller package. So the FS7 is just not that practical. It's gonna get a C tier because it's still a cinema camera, but not the greatest. The FX3, absolutely going S tier. I'm going to put this as the number 2 spot for now. The FX3 is amazing. I love this camera. I think, oh, look at this. Have it right here. I love the FX3. It's one of my favorite cameras of all time. The Creator was just shot on it, a full-fledged like cinema film, a Hollywood level film shot on the FX3. This is crazy. I mean, the fact that we have that, like you can go to Best Buy and just buy an FX3 and a Hollywood film was just shot on it. Obviously that just speaks to how great this camera is. The FX30 is, the ergonomics are exactly the same, but just the sensor performance is not quite as good. It's the same sensor as the A6700, so I'm going to put the FX30 right below the A6700 because the A6700 has a reliable photo mode to take high quality photo images, and you also get great video quality similar to the FX30, but the FX30 can't take the photos the way the 6700 does, so the FX30 doesn't get as high of a ranking there. The FX6 is going to go S tier, obviously. I mean, the built-in ND filter, the image quality of the A7S III series, FX3, right? It's amazing. I think I'm going to leave it down at the bottom because it's just not as accessible at that $6,000 price point. It's pretty hard for people to access that, but I'm gonna leave it at S tier because there really is not a lot of cameras like the FX6 in any class, obviously in Sony's ecosystem, but elsewhere as well, like Canon, Nikon, etc. Nobody has something like this. Okay, finally getting to the NEX cameras, okay? Where are we at? Let's make sure we're looking good. I see one error here. This A7 II needs to come up to the top spot on the D tier. I think this looks good. Okay, here we go. NEX3, this camera is not good. It's not a good camera. You get okay photos out of it, but pretty much nothing else, so it's gonna go F tier. The 3N is better. I think I'm going to leave it, I mean, I'm biased. This camera's really cool. I like this camera. I have a full review on my YouTube if you want this. I'm gonna have it take the bottom spot at D tier for now. NEX5, not good either. No manual video control. I think with a firmware update, you can do aperture video control, or you can change your aperture, I think, in video mode in one of the updates, but out of the box, you can't do anything manual for video. The video quality sucks, by the way. Even if you could, it's terrible resolution, but you get okay photos, so it's gonna go F tier. The 5N is very similar. I mean, I'll let the 5N, I'm gonna be biased. I'm gonna leave the 3N up there because it's cheaper, but the 5N, it's gonna take the top spot of F tier. The 5R, the 5R is really good. The 5R is very good. I'm gonna bring it above the 3N, as well as the 5T. These are basically the same camera. The 5R is gonna get a little bit higher ranking in D tier because it's a little bit cheaper than the 5T. They're basically the same camera, except the 5T has NFC technology built into the body, which is pretty irrelevant for most people. Next is the NEX6. This is basically the A6000, just kind of like a baby brother with a few less features, a little bit less high quality autofocus system. So it's gonna go down. I love the NEX6, I rave about this. If you've seen my YouTube channel, you know that's the case. The NEX7 is gonna go right below that just because of the price point. It's a really good camera as well, very similar to the A6000 and NEX6, but it's just kind of held its value. And I think it's unnecessarily held its value, to be honest. And it's hard to find them under $300, and sometimes you can find an A6000 for $300. So I'd rather go with that over the NEX7. The NEX-C3 straight to F tier, no way. This camera's like basically the color version of the NEX3. Don't love that camera. The F3, very good. I like this camera because of the ergonomics. It's one of the only NEX cameras that just feels different. It got some pizzazz. So it's gonna go actually the top of F tier. Still not amazing, but you can get good results with it. Oh, the QX1. If you've never heard of this camera, it is a camera. It's not a lens. It looks like a lens, but it's a camera that is designed to be able to use with a smartphone. And it's horrible. I've looked at a bunch of reviews and image samples, really slow autofocus. It's bad. It's probably the worst camera they've ever made. It's gonna be the very bottom of our list at F tier. Two cameras left, which are the ZV series. I'll start with the ZV-E10. I kind of classify this as the best sort of iteration of the A6000 series for like vlogging. So I might put it right below the A6400. Also the A6100, I think I'd put below the A6600. So yeah, probably right there in this slot. It's a good camera, really middle of the pack. You're gonna get great results, especially for the value of that camera, coming in at around like 650, 600 bucks and used, maybe sometimes even 550. Great value. And the ZV-E1, great camera. You're basically getting like cinema level quality and a compact body, which is why you have some problems with overheating. So I'm gonna have to put this probably, I mean, image quality wise, it's up here with A tier. Maybe I'll put it at the very bottom of A tier, the ZV-E1. Okay, I think that's my list. What do you guys think? I mean, as you look over this list, what are your critiques? Do you disagree with many of the placements or a few of the placements? I'd love to know down in the comments below. This was fun to do. I'm gonna try to keep doing more reviews on Sony Alpha cameras on this channel. I've done reviews on a ton of these. I've tested personally about 32 of them, and then I'm gonna try to get my hands on more of them to continue testing and putting out reviews for you to make educated buying decisions to get the best bang for your buck if you're a filmmaker or photographer. Thanks so much, guys, for watching this video. I appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe for more videos so you don't miss any reviews in the future. Thanks, guys, again. Much love. Much love.